Hi everyone, I'm Jacqueline from the MakeCode team, and I'm here with Arelia from the GitHub Education Team. And we're super excited. Today we're going to talk to you about how educators and students can use MakeCode and GitHub together. Arelia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. My name is Arelia Jones, and I'm the Developer Program Manager for Teachers on the GitHub Education Team.
So for those folks who may not be familiar with GitHub, can you give us a little bit of background? Like what is GitHub?
GitHub is the home of all developers. That's what we like to call ourselves. It's a place where developers can host and review code, manage projects, and build software with their teams and with other developers all over the world. And GitHub stores the version control information on your project. So as you make changes, your teammates can review those changes and you can easily undo changes when you need to.
And how do students and educators use GitHub?
Students and educators, well, students want to be prepared for the real work world, and teachers want their students to be prepared for the work world. And so students want to use GitHub the same way developers use it every day, collaborating, doing code review, and storing their changes so that they can review those changes and do those changes and have a history of what's going on with their projects.
Got it. And so there's regular GitHub, and then there's something called GitHub Classroom. Can you tell us a little bit about what GitHub Classroom is?
Yes, GitHub Classroom is a tool built on top of GitHub, and it helps teachers teach with GitHub. So teachers can automatically distribute their coding assignments to students. They can assess those assignments with automated testing and grading, and they can give direct feedback line by line on student code.
Awesome. That sounds great. So before we dive into GitHub Classroom and all the exciting things that are going on there, one thing I did want to show really quick is a quick demo of an existing feature that we already have. We've had for a couple months now, but some folks may not be aware of it. So here I am in MakeCode Arcade. And say I'm building a game. So this is my little demo game here. And this game is either I want to collaborate with someone on the development of it. So I want to work with someone and go back and forth. Or B, this is going to be a really complex game. It's going to take me a long time, and I really want to make sure that I have version control and source control on this game. Well, I can do that by storing my project in GitHub. So you'll notice down here at the bottom, there's a little button next to the Save button that has the GitHub icon. So if I click that, I can actually create a GitHub repository for my MakeCode project. And I can create a public repository, or it can be private as well. So this is my description, my game, and then click go ahead. And one thing I will mention is you do have to have a GitHub account for this to work, and you have to be signed in through that. And so with GitHub, you have to be 13 years or older. But once you're signed in with GitHub, it should just work. And you'll notice there's now a little arrow here, down here on the button, letting me know that this project is backed by GitHub. So say I want to make some changes to my game. So for example, if I want to maybe add a projectile that's coming across the screen, let's see, let's do maybe an ice cream cone projectile that's going across my game screen. So once I've made those changes, and you'll notice I made those in blocks. Now let's make another change in, say, JavaScript. So let's do, maybe we want to do the set score. Set score. All right, to 0. So I made a couple of changes to my project. Now if I click this GitHub button down here at the bottom, I'm going to see this page that's going to show me the changes that I just made. And it'll show me the changes I made in blocks. So I added a couple blocks here. And it'll also show me the changes that I made in the JavaScript too. And you can see I can even create branches for my project as well. I can revert any changes if I don't want them. and then I'll just commit and push my changes to my GitHub repo. So this is a really nice way for students who want to collaborate with other students on projects to use, a public repo to do it and MakeCode as the front end. Or, if you just want to have some version control and some source control for a little bit more complex program that you're writing. So yeah, so that's an existing feature that we have. It's slowly getting rolled out to all of our MakeCode editors. It's an arcade, will be in microbit soon, and the rest coming soon. But even more exciting than this, we've got a new announcement today that we're making with Arelia around GitHub Classroom. So Arelia, I'm going to pass it off to you if you want to share your screen here.
Yes. And
yeah.
Spoiler alert, the new thing is that GitHub Classroom integrates with Microsoft MakeCode Arcade. So
Hooray!
I'm going to walk you through. I'll walk you through GitHub Classroom and we'll create an assignment with MakeCode. So I'm sharing my screen. All right, and we're going to see a teacher's workflow from setup to grading. We'll see how a student accepts an assignment. And of course, we'll see how to use an online IDE like MakeCode with your assignments. We'll also take a couple of detours to see how to create an organization and how to upgrade your organization. So as I go, please put your questions in the chat and I'll be looking for them there. We are logged into our GitHub account and we're starting at classroom.github.com. If you weren't logged in, you would come to our GitHub Classroom landing page that looks like this. And then if you're coming to Classroom for the first time, you'd need to authorize GitHub Classroom to interact with your GitHub account. And once you've done all of that and you're coming to Classroom for the first time, you'll see that you need to create your first classroom and your page will look like this. Going back into my instance of GitHub Classroom, I have a couple of demo classes. This is what it looks like when you have some existing classes. I'm going to create a new classroom by either clicking the green New Classroom button here or by clicking the plus sign. So let's go ahead and click the plus sign. And when we click to create our classroom, we're prompted to choose an organization. The first time we set up GitHub Classroom and we don't yet have any organizations added, we'll see a screen that looks like this where we can create a new organization on the left or we can grant access to an existing organization on the right. So back in GitHub Classroom, I have a Create Organization button in the top right and a Grant Us Access link at the bottom of the page. So let's pause and talk more about what an organization is before we create one. Each classroom you create will be associated with an organization. An organization is an umbrella account in GitHub where you can store all of your repositories, and repositories are collections of all of the code and instructions for projects, assignments, applications, etc. We're going to create an organization where our students' assignment repositories will live, and what we'll see later is that each student will have their own assignment repository where they will do their work, and those repositories will belong to the organization that we create.
So Arelia, is it fair, is it fair to think of an organization as like a school?
Yes, you can think of an organization as a school, or if you are a teacher who is creating this organization just for yourself, you might think of your organization as one semester or one class or one section, depending on how you want to organize yourself.
I see. Okay.
So let's go ahead and create an organization. I'll click that Create an Organization button. And I want to give my organization a name. So I'm going to call this one MakeCode Student Demos. Because that is where my student code is going to live. And I'll type in my contact email address. Arelia is a teacher at gmail.com. So any notifications regarding this organization, like when a new repository is set up, those notifications are going to go to that email address. And I can set this organization to belong to my personal account. But like I mentioned, your organization might be a school. If your school is a GitHub Campus Program partner, if your school is on a GitHub Enterprise plan, or if you have any other instruction from your school that your student's code and the organization that your student's code belongs to should not belong to you, then you might want to choose a business or institution and set up your organization to belong to your school if you've gotten that instruction. So I'm just going to use my personal account and click Next. And this brings us back to GitHub Classroom, but we don't yet see our organization here. I need to grant access to the one that we've just created, so I'll click Grant Us Access. And I see a list of the permissions that GitHub Classroom needs for interacting with our organization. And at the bottom, I see a list of organizations that I own. And the organization that we've just created, MakeCode Student Demos, has a red X because we haven't yet granted access to GitHub Classroom. So I'll click Grant. And I'll type in, or I'll paste in my GitHub account password. And so now we've granted access to this organization with GitHub Classroom. I can close this tab and go back to GitHub Classroom and refresh the page. And there is our MakeCode Student Demos organization. So this is where I want my student code to live. And I'll click into that, or before I click into that organization, let's talk about upgrading the organization. So applying for GitHub Education benefits for teachers is optional, and you can use GitHub Classroom without signing up for additional benefits. But let's go over what those benefits are and how to get them. Faculty can apply for benefits to get access to GitHub Education benefits for teachers and to upgrade organizations to the GitHub Team plan, which will grant you more GitHub Actions minutes. We'll need those when we set up auto grading on our assignments. You will be able to create an organization just like we did and automatically upgrade the organization yourself. And so to do that, I'm going to education.github.com/teachers, and I'm going to click on Get Benefits for Teachers. And because I'm logged into a teacher account that already has these benefits, I see the options that are available to me. But if you were not logged into an account that already has those benefits, you would land on our discount request form here and request those benefits. So you would indicate that you are faculty, and you would select a verified email address that you've already verified on your GitHub account, preferably a school email address. And then we want to know the name of your school. Please upload dated documentation that shows that you're currently employed as faculty. Let us know how you plan to use GitHub, and then submit your information. Once you've done that, and you come back to the education.github.com/benefits page where we are now, you'll see what I see here, the list of options available to teachers, and click into the GitHub Teacher Toolbox. So the Teacher Toolbox are several offers that come from different partners that you might want to use in teaching your computer science classes. I'm going to sort this by company and scroll down to the GitHub offers. And I'm looking for self-serve free team plans to academic organizations you own. So I'll click GitHub. And here's where I can upgrade my organization. So here's our MakeCode Student Demos org, and I'll click Upgrade. And I'm using this organization for Classroom, and click Finish Upgrade. And it says that the request is processing, but if I refresh the page, I can see that the coupon's already applied. So now the organization that we've created for our class has been upgraded to GitHub Team. Going back into GitHub Classroom, we have created our organization and we've upgraded our organization. So let's choose our MakeCode Student Demos organization to store our student code. And now I want to give my classroom a name. I'm going to call this one CS 101 Spring 2020 Section 1. So just like when you're naming your organization, think about how you want to organize yourself when you're naming your classroom. Do you want to have one class for your entire semester, or per course, or per section? Consider that when you're creating your class. So I'll click Continue. And next, we want to add any teaching assistants and administrators to manage our organization and our class. So in step 1, we can add TAs and admins to our organization. This will take us into the organization setup flow, where we will add individuals who can manage the repositories that we're storing there. And so remember to come back to GitHub Classroom and complete step 2, which is to ask your teaching assistants and administrators to join your classroom. So you'll share this URL with them, and they'll have access to managing your assignments and reviewing student code in your classroom. I'll click Continue for now. And then our next step here is to add our students to our classroom. GitHub Classroom integrates with these learning management tools. And we have two other ways to add students to our roster, so I'll skip here. So we have that learning management system import option again. We can upload a CSV or text file. So if I have a local file of students' first and last names, email addresses, their GitHub handles, whatever I am using for identifying my students, I can upload that file, and I can also add that information in the text field here. So I'm going to paste in some student IDs, and that's going to be our student roster. So I'll click Create Roster. And we have our student roster. If I need to edit that later, I can go to the Students tab. And from here, I can add additional students under the Update Students box. I can link or unlink my student roster to each student's individual GitHub account. So if a student accidentally chooses the wrong student ID, I can unlink them so that they can come back in and choose the correct student ID. We'll see where the students select their student IDs in a moment. So going back to my Assignments tab, and we've set up our organization, our teaching assistants and administrators, and we've set up our student roster. Let's create our first assignment. And we're going to choose MakeCode as our online IDE. So we're going to create an individual assignment, and then later we will create a group assignment. So let's give our assignment a title, and I'm going to call this Lesson 1. And I can give my assignment a deadline, so let's say it's due tomorrow at 5 p.m. And for now, we're going to set up an individual assignment. I can choose to set the repository visibility. So if I want my students' repositories to not be shared with other students and not be shared with the public, then I can leave repository visibility set to private. Or if it's okay that my students are sharing their work with other developers, I can set repository visibility to public. I'm going to leave this set to private for now. Our next option is whether to grant students admin access to the repository. So if I want my students to be able to add collaborators to the repository, add CI tools to the repository, then I want to grant them admin access so that they can make those changes. But if I don't want my students making any accidental settings changes or unauthorized settings changes, then I do not want to grant them admin access to the repository. So I'm going to leave that box unchecked for now and click Continue. And now I can add starter code. So this is the code that my students will receive so that they can do their work and they can complete the code and continue their work. I have a starter code repository here, Arelia Classroom Demos Chase the Pizza. And so this is a repository where I have gone into MakeCode. I did the Chase the Pizza tutorial, and that created a MakeCode block file. And so here is a preview of the blocks that I built in MakeCode. And in this assignment, I want my students to update their variable name so that it matches the food sprite image. I have a food sprite here that is a donut, but I have a variable name that is hot dog. So that's what I want my students to update. I want them to change that variable name. I created these files in MakeCode and pushed them back into GitHub the way that Jacqueline showed us earlier. And then I set my repository to be a template repository. So you can see the template label here at the top. And the way I did that was going into settings on my repository and then checking the template repository box. So template repositories are GitHub's way of copying over boilerplate code and directories, and it's going to copy over much faster when the student accepts their assignment and gets their own copy of these files. So I'm going to go back into GitHub Classroom and select a repository and type in Arelia Classroom Demos Chase the Pizza, and here's our repository. It should show up in the list below. And I'm going to choose import method template repository, so I will leave that selected. You can use repositories that are not template repositories, such as if you maybe don't own the repository and you want to use it as starter code but you don't have access to change the settings. You can import using source importer. source importer will also copy over the Git history and the version control history of your repository. So sometimes you might need that, but just keep in mind that it may take longer when your students are accepting their assignment for that code to copy over. My next option here is to select an online IDE. So I am going to choose Microsoft MakeCode so my students can do their work inside of MakeCode. And click Continue. Our next option is whether to add auto grading tests. So I haven't added any tests to my repository, my starter code repository, but let's take a quick look at how we would set up an auto grading test. So I would click the Add Test button, and there are several languages here that are pre-set up. So if I were running a Node application and having my students work in Node, I could choose Run Node. I would give this test a name, and then my setup command and my command to run the test, they're already filled in here for me. And then I can change the timeout. So when I'm setting the timeout, I'm considering how long should it take my test to run. So maybe it's a quick test and it doesn't need more than 5 minutes to run. And I'm considering, what if my student writes an infinite loop? I don't want that test to run forever. So I want to set a timeout that is high enough to cover how long my test should take, but not so long that the test is going to run for very long. Because these test minutes, the timeout minutes, and each test that runs is going to run against my allocation of GitHub Actions minutes. Because we upgraded our organization, we get 3,000 GitHub Actions minutes per month, but we still want to make sure that no test is going to use all of those minutes. And then I can set a points value here. So every time a test passes or fails, the student will earn the appropriate number of points for completing that part of the assignment. So I'll close this. A couple of other ways we could add a test. If our language that we're using is not listed here, we could choose Run Command, and this gives us a blank form where we can enter our own setup and run commands. And last, I can choose an input-output test, where I would enter my commands and I can enter output. So let's say I want to output hello world, then I would have the student maybe input world, and my expected output would be hello world. And I can compare those inputs and outputs. I can use an included comparison, so I'm looking for that string to be returned anywhere within what is returned from the student's output. I can do an exact comparison. I'm looking for exactly hello world, or I can use a regular expression to describe the outputs I'm looking for. So I'll close this. And my next option is to enable feedback pull requests. So enabling feedback pull requests will automatically open a pull request when the student accepts their assignment. And so as students are making changes to their code, we will have a pull request where we can see their line-by-line changes and make direct feedback on those lines of code. So now I'll create my assignment. And our assignment is ready. We have a URL here that we can share with our students, and so they can get started on their work. But before we do that, we need to grant permission for MakeCode to interact with our student repositories. So I'm going to click Go Grant Access, and I will authorize Microsoft MakeCode. And MakeCode needs access to the organization that we've just created where our students' repositories will live. So I'm going to click Grant next to that organization and authorize Microsoft MakeCode. And now we're being redirected to GitHub Classroom. And so we've completed setting up our assignment, lesson 1, and I have the invite link that I can copy and share with my students. Let's click over to the Students tab, or rather I'll click back into the Assignments tab and click into Assignments. And here's where I can see my student roster for this assignment, and I can see that none of my students have linked their GitHub accounts or have accepted the assignment. I can click this to go away. I've granted access already. Okay. So now I'm going to switch over to my student view, my black browser here, where I will paste in my assignment URL and accept this assignment. I'm joining this classroom and accepting an assignment in this classroom for the first time. So I need to first find my student ID or my first and last name, find myself on my teacher's roster. So here's my student ID, and I'll confirm. And the next time I accept an assignment, I won't have to go through that step. So now I'm accepting the assignment. I'll click accept this assignment. And because we're using a template repository, it should copy over pretty quickly. So we've created an assignment. Our repository is at this URL and has our name, our GitHub handle at the end of the URL. And I can see when my assignment is due. So I'll click into my repository. And here I can see my starter code, all of my files. I can see in the README that my assignment is to update the variable name. And I have a work and make code button. So I'll click this button and get started on working on my project. So this is opening a MakeCode project with my teacher's starter code already set up. And here's where I can do my work. So I see the sprite image that is a donut, but the variable name is hot dog. So I'm going to click on hot dog and rename that variable to donut and click OK. And my variable updates in every spot where it's used. So great, and I finished my work, and I'm going to push my changes back to GitHub. So I'll click the GitHub button down at the bottom here. I can see the diff of my changes, and I'll write a commit message. I updated the variable. And I'll commit and push those changes back to GitHub. So now I'm going to duplicate my tab so I can go back and find my repository. And here in my repository, if I take a look at the commits, here's my commit. This is where I completed my assignment, I updated the variable, and that commit shows up in my GitHub repository. Switching back into our teacher view, if I refresh the page on my assignment, I can see that this student has begun their work, they've accepted the assignment, and I have review buttons here where I can take a look at what the student's done so far. So if I click review, this will take me to the automatic feedback pull request that we opened. So the student committed, in this case, into master, and the GitHub Education Team, we've cut a branch called feedback, and that lets us see the diff between what was originally in feedback and what the student has changed in master. This gives us a files change page, so we can take a look at the difference in the JavaScript files. And back on the conversation page, we would have here, we would see the difference between the blocks. That is a known bug that the team has already started working on. And so you'll be able to see the changes that your students have made. And let's give the student a message. Good job getting started. And click comment rather. And so the student is receiving emails that will lead them back to their pull request so that they can see the feedback that the teacher has given them, that the teaching assistants have given them. If I go back into files changed, I can make a comment directly on the lines of code. This looks good. And so the students are receiving those comments as well, and they know exactly where they went right or where they maybe need to try again with their work. If I go back to GitHub Classroom, to my assignment, and click the View IDE button, this will open the student's work in MakeCode. So I can run the student's project without having to pull down any code, without having to do any local environment setup on my end. I can just run their work inside of MakeCode. And then going back to GitHub Classroom, our last button here is the Go to Repo button, which will take us to the front page of the student's repository. And from here, I can see the feedback pull request, I can see the student's commits, I can see if we had run tests, those would show up under the Actions tab. Back in GitHub Classroom, we'd also have a View Test button here as well. So that is what an individual assignment looks like. Now let's take a look at a group assignment. So I'll click back into my classroom and create a new assignment. And I'll call this one group assignment. I'll skip giving it a deadline, and I will set this to be a group assignment, which gives us the option to name our set of teams. So I could call this today's teams. And by naming that set of teams, I can reuse this set of teams on future group assignments. I can set a maximum number of members per team, so let's say 5, and a maximum number of teams, I'll say 4. Oops. And then I'll leave repository visibility set to private and click continue. I can select my starter code again, Arelia, Classroom, Demos, Chase the Pizza. Our import method is template repository again. We will select MakeCode as our online IDE, click continue, and we can enable feedback pull requests and create our assignment. So now we have another URL that we can share with our students. So I'll copy that and switch back into my student view and accept this assignment. And because I'm the first student to join this group assignment, I get to create the first team. Let's call it Arelia's team and click create. Our starter code will copy over like before, and we will get a repository here. Group assignment is the name of our assignment, and Arelia's team is the team that owns this repository. So I can click into this repository and do my work just like before. Let's go back to our teacher view, and we'll pretend that we are a student, a second student, and also accept this assignment. So again, this is my first time joining this class. Let me find my student ID and confirm. And then I'm the second student to accept a group assignment. I can either join an existing team or create a new team. If I join Arelia's team, that takes me directly to the repository that was already created, so we didn't have to copy over that code. And I can join this same repository, and we can work collaboratively on our group work. And so that's about it. And to recap, we've seen how a teacher sets up assignments in groups and grading, and how a student accepts an assignment. Students can show progress as they make commits, and teachers can see early versions of student work as they go and view the final product from GitHub Classroom. And when teachers set up feedback tools, students get immediate insight on how to improve their code, which enhances their learning. For teachers, GitHub Classroom also frees up time by automatically generating repositories for each student and by providing direct access to review and give feedback on each student's progress. So I'm going to share a few links in the Mixer chat.
Great. And Aurelia, you want to stop sharing your screen so we can get back to...
Here we go.
All right.
Yeah, all right. And so to just go over these links, take a look at our blog post on how to set up your classroom and try those steps. You can speak with other teachers in our GitHub Education community at education.github.community. Take a deep dive with our GitHub Classroom help docs at classroom.github.com/help, and take a look at how to use an online IDE from those same help docs. You can learn more about version control and GitHub best practices at lab.github.com. And I have included a survey link in there as well. Please let us know what other deep dives we should be doing on GitHub Classroom.
That's right. And so this is like a sort of a first version of our integration together. And so we definitely want to hear feedback from teachers who are trying it out, using it, going through the workflow. Please give us feedback either through the survey that Arelia just sent, or you can go to the MakeCode forums and let us know what your thoughts are. But yeah, we would definitely love to hear your thoughts. All right. Any last tips or feedback or comments, Arelia, for anyone watching?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you, Jacqueline, for having me, and please let us know what you think about the integration.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we'd like to do more of these sort of GitHub deep dives on our Mixer channel going forward. So look for that programming coming up. Thanks so much, Arelia, for spending the time with us today. And
thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye.